Well, good evening, everybody. I really hope everybody's safe and well. And I just would like to take the opportunity to share something from the Bible to encourage our hearts just during lockdown as we continue to be apart from one another. I'm going to turn into the Psalms tonight. I'm going to read in Psalm 61 and just to share some thoughts there. Let me give you the background to my thoughts and to the next few messages that I would like, with the Lord's help, to share with everyone. My granddaughter Daisy, like so many children at the moment, is schooling at home, is getting homeschooled, and she was quite shocked as she learned during homeschooling about the human heart. And she saw some pictures or photographs of the human heart, and she even saw a video of the human heart working, and she was absolutely shocked. She had this picture in her young mind that the heart was just like the red emoji that we see, or the red heart that we see on Valentine cards, and she was really quite shocked when she saw what the heart looked like. But she did learn about the importance of the human heart. And it caused me to think of the references to the heart in the Bible. And of course, when we read of the heart in the Bible, it's not speaking about that vital organ, that muscle that pumps the blood through our body, but it's speaking about our innermost being. It's speaking about the seat or the center of our affections and our will and our desires. It's really speaking not about something physical, but about something spiritual and about our inner man. And so that's why the first mention of heart in the Bible, it speaks about the heart of man, the imaginations of the heart of man being wicked. And it doesn't speak about the human heart, of course, but about our inmost being. I want to look at some heart conditions. I want to play the part of a cardiologist and to examine various conditions of heart. In relation to the psalmist, actually, many times in the Psalms we read of the psalmist's heart, and I just want to think about that. So tonight I would just like to read the first 4 verses of Psalm 61 if you want to follow along with me. Psalm 61 and verse 1, to the chief musician upon Negina. It's a psalm of David. Hear my cry, O God. Attend unto my prayer. From the end of the earth will I cry unto thee. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. For thou hast been a shelter for me, and a strong tower from the enemy. I will abide in thy tabernacle forever. I will trust in the covert of thy wings, Selah. And so I trust the Lord will bless these verses to each one of us, and they might be an encouragement to our hearts tonight. The first heart condition that we read about is an overwhelmed heart. The psalmist says, when my heart is overwhelmed. And so we want to think about this condition of the heart of the psalmist. The psalmist opens in verse 1 by appealing to the Lord to be attentive, to pay attention to his prayer and to hear his cry. And then in verse 2, the psalmist is using 2 pictures to describe the trouble that he is passing through, the trouble that he is experiencing. The first thing he speaks about is the distance of his trouble. He speaks about crying to the Lord from the end of the earth. And he really feels so far away. The psalmist is perhaps thinking of Jerusalem. He's thinking about the place where the Lord has blessed and the Lord has placed his name. He's perhaps thinking of the people that he companied with and communed with in that place. And although physically, in relation to miles, he may not have been that far, but it just seemed so far away. And the psalmist just feels like he's so far away, he's crying as if it were from the end of the earth. He just feels so far from the Lord's place and the Lord's people. And so, in describing his trouble, he says it's like being at a distance, being separated, being isolated. And then he says not only is there distance, but there is the depth of his trouble. And he says, when my heart is overwhelmed. And so he's now thinking of sinking, of being overwhelmed by the waves of trouble. The same word is used in the title of Psalm 102. The title of Psalm 102 is a psalm of the afflicted, a prayer of the afflicted rather, when he is overwhelmed and has poured out his complaint before the Lord. The same word is used by Jonah as he is sinking to the bottom of the ocean in the belly of the whale. He uses the word, it's translated as fainted, when my soul fainted within me, when it was overwhelmed and I just fainted. And so the thought of being overwhelmed, it leads to feelings of helplessness and hopelessness and not being in control, not being able to cope, or feeling alone, feeling isolated, and just overwhelmed by the whole situation. And so the psalmist David uses these two illustrations to describe the trouble that he is experiencing. And perhaps some in my hearing tonight can just relate to that. Maybe you feel at a distance from all that you've known and loved for so many years, and you're just apart from it all just now and feeling the weight of that. And maybe you're overwhelmed as well. Maybe you're finding it difficult and you're feeling helpless and hopeless. And maybe just in relation to your work, in relation to your family, in relation to your fellowship, in relation to your well-being, your mental well-being perhaps, and you're overwhelmed. Well, where does the psalmist turn to? Well, he turns to God. And he uses five things perhaps, to describe his God in relation to this. The first way that he describes his God is as the rock. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. I'm faint, I'm overwhelmed, I'm not able to get there, I'm not able to rise up above these things, but Lord, lift me up. Lord, lead me. Lord, raise me up and set me on the rock. And so he speaks of being led to the rock that is higher than I. The rock would speak to us of a place of salvation. Jesus is the rock of my salvation. And then he remembers and he says, Lord, you have been a shelter to me. So not only is his God a place of salvation, but his God is a place of safety, somewhere where he can shelter from the trouble that he's experiencing. And then he says, not only have you been a shelter, Lord, but Lord, you've been a strong tower. And so a place of salvation, a place of safety, a place of security. The Proverbs teach us that the name of the Lord is a strong tower, and the righteous run in and are safe. And we say with the hymn writer, blessed be the name of the Lord, a place of security. Perhaps the psalmist is thinking again of Jerusalem, and he's thinking of the Psalm 48, walk about Zion, go round about her, tell her towers thereof, mark well her bulwarks. And so the Lord is a strong tower. And having reminded himself of these things, he then says, I will dwell in the tabernacle of the Lord. And so that now speaks of the presence of the Lord, the place where the Lord is. And the psalmist is saying, even if I'm apart from him in relation to the congregation of the people, I'm still going to hide in the experience and the enjoyment of his presence. May we know the presence of the Lord. David said in another psalm, one thing have I desired of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I might dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. And then he goes on to say, in time of trouble, he will hide me in his pavilion. In the secret of his tabernacle, he shall hide me, he shall set me upon a rock. And not only the Lord's presence, but the psalmist reminds himself of the Lord's protection. And he says, I'm going to shelter in the covert of your wings. Like that lovely character Ruth, the psalmist has come to trust under the wings of the Lord God of Israel. And we can say with the hymn writer that under his wings we are safely abiding. The hymn writer also says, safe to the rock that is higher than I, my soul in its conflicts and sorrows would fly. So sinful, so weary, thine would I be. Thou blessed rock of ages, I'm hiding in thee. So we've seen the first heart condition tonight. It is an overwhelmed heart. And perhaps some are feeling that tonight. Perhaps some are feeling my heart is overwhelmed within me. Well, may we be led to the rock that is higher. And may we be reminded of the one who is a shelter and a strong tower. May we abide in the tabernacle of his presence and shelter under his wings. And may the Lord richly bless and keep each one of us.